Welcome to the Titans of Industry show, and we've just released an important micro-documentary dealing with the challenges faced by the US government and the debt ceiling. It's called June 1st, Deep State to Overthrow Trump, and it's on our YouTube channel as well. You know, under Obama, the federal government spent $4,000 per second above their income level. Basically borrowed $4,000 per second. This means that while you're listening to this interview, the United States government managed to borrow about $5 million. We've had great interviews these past week with the sovereign man Simon Black last week, sharing with us his amazing story about how he became an awakened person after he was an intelligence officer serving in Iraq and saw the lies the troops and citizens were fed back home and told on Iraq. We had Jordan Goodman, the debt slasher from MoneyAnswers.com, with great strategies for managing your mortgage and your student loan debts, slashing them basically from 30-year mortgages to 5 to 7 years, as well as consolidating student loans. And he revealed his top 8% yielding real estate strategy. And today, I'm circling back to the future of financial technology, cryptocurrencies. Last week, Adam Meister and I had a chat and about the basics of Bitcoin, and you can listen to that on our YouTube channel. And I suggest that if you're listening to this interview and you don't quite understand some of the terminology, go back and listen to that interview first. With that, I want to welcome to the show the perfect guest to speak Bitcoin and financial technology with, Dave Scotese from litmocracy.com, and we'll have those links up below the description and on the screen all the time. Dave, how are you today?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good. I'm very excited that you're with us today, and as it happens, we're speaking on the 15th of March. There's a couple of major news items out. The Fed just raised rates for the third time in a year and a half, and the second time in 4 months. And literally, we're about an hour. We're recording this at the closing of the market, and after the Fed announcements, precious metals are up big. The GDXJ is up like 10%, and Bitcoin has recovered basically all the lost from Friday's disapproval of the newly suggested ETF. Dave, who are the type of people buying Bitcoins? Are they young people mostly? Are they old? Are they American, Asian, European, South Americans? I mean, where is this popular right now? Where's the buying coming from?
Wow, that's a good question. I guess the people that I trade with now, I mean, they're old customers because I recently stopped getting new customers. Actually, I recently stopped trading altogether. But as far as, I've been trading for a couple years, 3 years, I think. And the kind of people, there's maybe 5% or 10% that are over my age. I'm 47. And then maybe 30 to 40% who are, college age or under. And then the rest of them, which is the majority, are about my age, 30s, 40s.
That's interesting that you're saying that the age makes a difference with Bitcoin. Do you think it's because of the technology? Do you think it's because of the fact that the younger people see it more often on their on their browser and web, talking with their friends? And also, do you think this is more popular in North America or in other places in the world?
Well, there's two issues that contribute to to my answer about the age. Is that's the age that I've seen people coming to me to buy Bitcoin. But if you go on, I mean, you'd have to ask, Coinbase or one of the exchanges or whatever, who are, because I think a lot of, I have a friend who's 10 or 20 years older than me, and he has purchased some Bitcoin. He went through Coinbase, and you can also open up an exchange account. And for people that are older, I think did you know that as you get older, you lose faith in government? Okay. Well, anyway, I'll just throw that out there. But the reason I was thinking, yeah, well, it's true for me anyway. But what I was thinking is that as older people are more comfortable with established institutions because they're not, I don't want to say spry, but that's true. You lose spryness as you get older, mentally and physically. And so, if it's an established institution, then it's going to be more attractive to you. Then a young person's like, oh, gung-ho, I'll just, go get it from wherever. So that might contribute to my experience because I'm just a guy who's selling Bitcoin, so I'm not an established institution. So that changes the ages that I see coming to me to buy Bitcoin. And then outside of that, you were talking about general trend, and I don't really know. I haven't looked at what are the ages of people that buy Bitcoin. I only have my own personal experience for that.
Well, you know what? Let's switch gears here, and I want to ask you, Dave. Gold and silver, which have been chosen by the free market for thousands of years to act as money, have intrinsic value because gold has a number of uses, but most of all, it has a monetary role. Silver is the most diversified industrial precious metal on the planet. It has thousands of applications, and they're both mined from the ground. Some people, and even legitimate companies are now mining bitcoins. What is that exactly?
Oh, Bitcoin mining? Are you asking me what is Bitcoin mining? Yeah, I love that question. So the way Bitcoin works is some people have it and some people want it, and some people want to give it to other people in trade. And so how do you do that? The way you do that is you say you have a secret, and it is by virtue of knowing the secret that you can send the Bitcoin. You use the secret as part of a cryptographic system to sign a transaction. And because you have the secret that is required to sign the transaction, that means you can spend those Bitcoins. So you make the transaction, it's just some data your computer puts together, and then you sign it using your secret, which probably should be protected with a good password on your computer. So that transaction gets signed, and then it's just a data packet, and you broadcast it. You give it to the internet, and everybody can pick it up. There's nothing secret about it. It's just a transaction. It says this Bitcoin is going from this address to this other address. Okay, so that data goes out on the internet, and it has to be collected and protected so that nobody can change it. The people who protect it are called Bitcoin miners, and by protecting it, the Bitcoin community has agreed they can earn some Bitcoin by doing it, and that's called the subsidy, and right now they're getting 12.5 Bitcoins to do that. So did you want me to go into the mechanics of how they go about protecting the Bitcoin?
No, I think that's too complicated, but I do want to ask you this. It's fascinated me, and now I know you come from a tech background, so is Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, have they come out, around the time that they have come out because of some new technology that developed in the internet space, or theoretically could they have been formed if somebody has thought of them early in the internet days, like do what they need and what they require is only the internet, or is it something more?
There is something more, and that's a really interesting question the way you asked it, because I was thinking, well, it's dual key cryptography. It's this idea where, like I was saying, there's a secret involved. A Bitcoin address actually represents a two-part thing. One part is public. You give it to everybody. That's your Bitcoin address. The other part is secret, and you hold that secret. And so if somebody uses your public address, they send Bitcoin to it, you have to have the secret to spend it. And that is a result of a thing called dual key cryptography. For Bitcoin, it's dual key cryptography based on an elliptic curve, which is a mathematical object, which is pretty complicated, like you were saying. But the technology of making encryption itself has been around forever. There was, Enigma, I think is what it was called in World War II, and the Japanese, the Germans, I can't remember which. So encryption's been around a long time, and dual key encryption probably was created before the internet. But once the internet was out there, and so the way data travels through the internet, everybody puts their hands on it. It's just traveling from machine to machine to machine till it gets to the destination. And all along that way, there could be people snooping on it. And so the idea was born, well, why don't we make it encrypted first? And so then the research into cryptography and how do you protect your data, I imagine, exploded around the time that the internet came out, because there were so much more data was passing through hands of people that the sender and receiver didn't want to be able to read it. And that, I think, provided a lot of fuel for the development of Bitcoin.
That's very, very interesting. The conferences, the Bitcoin conferences and other cryptocurrencies, they draw a good crowd. They draw a very mainstream crowd. They draw from technical people to banking industry people. I've seen JP Morgan people and Goldman Sachs people, and Bank of America people sitting in Bitcoin conferences, taking notes, understanding what's going on. How is the banking industry going to be affected by this financial technology?
As I understand, banks make a lot of money by doing a particular thing, which is to transfer money between parties. And with the advent of Bitcoin, that's becoming possible to do using all of the other people interested in the Bitcoin. So basically, when you do a Bitcoin transaction, you're relying on a little over half of the miners to validate your transaction. They validate it, and by virtue of their validation, it ends up in the public ledger, which is called the blockchain. And then that enables other people to see that the person you gave it to can now spend it. And so then they can use it and give it to somebody else, and it keeps going. And if you're really understanding, if you can see, well, don't the transactions just there's more and more every day. And that's true, there's more and more. The blockchain is now like 40 gigabytes, and it's just going to keep growing. And that's all the transactions that ever happened. And so what that does to banks who are saying, oh, well, we make money because we hold it, and then somebody we're holding it for says they want somebody else to have it, and so we transfer it, from one account to the other, and then that other person can use it, and the first person can't use it anymore. And everybody's been trusting the banks to do that for hundreds, thousands of years. I don't know. And so now what Bitcoin is doing is say, well, we don't need you to do that for us anymore. And the banks are trying to figure out, well, how do we make money if it's not that way? Because that's one of the most lucrative things that they do for us. So I think they're trying to figure out what to do about it.
No doubt. Why are you personally excited about Bitcoin? What drew you to Bitcoin first, and just share your own experience?
Wow. I can't remember exactly, but I think I met somebody at a freedom festival of some sort who mentioned Bitcoin, and then I found out that I could do software programming and people could send me Bitcoin. And I thought that was a pretty good way to get it. I do, it's a hobby. Software programming is a hobby for me, so I was doing it for free anyway. I might as well do it for somebody else, and then they could send me this stuff that might be worth something someday. And I made, 50 or 100 Bitcoins. It was $50 worth or $100 worth, whatever. And after that, I thought, well, the price keeps going up and down. Maybe I can day trade. And so I got into it, and then I realized that the exchanges that I wanted to use got shut down. Then I went to local Bitcoins, and I found that there are private parties that want to buy and sell Bitcoin, and I could sit between them and match them together, or just take the trades myself. And then, on both sides, because there were people coming in who wanted to buy and people coming in who wanted to sell, and I could make a little margin in between. So I was doing that for a while. But what really excites me about Bitcoin is that it is removing the reliance people have on trusting institutions. And, that didn't used to excite me. That would have been like, well, who cares? What's the point? But after 9/11 and George Bush said they attacked us for our freedoms, And that sounded ridiculous to me, so I started looking into it, and I found that it's actually misdirection. And really, what was going on is there's a lot of corruption. Corruption is based on trust. The public trusts an institution, and that gives the people running the institution the ability to do things they shouldn't do. And if they did them without the trust, people would just be like, well, I'm not going to do business with you because you cheat. But if it's an institution that's running a government, you can't say to the government, oh, I'm not going to do business with you anymore because you cheat. And they know that, so they cheat. They hide it somewhat, but they also don't hide it, and you can go do the research and you find out, yeah, they cheat. And so when I started realizing that, I was like, well, we have to figure out how to do business and interact with each other and have social cohesion without relying on the government, because they're just going to keep cheating us. The more we rely on them, the more they're going to cheat us. So, and Bitcoin stepped right in and said, well, hey, I'm Bitcoin. I have the solution financially. You guys work out the stuff for crime and punishment and all that stuff, but I got the finances down. So let's go. And I thought that was awesome. And so I really love Bitcoin for that reason.
Sure. Dave, can you explain a little bit about the competing currencies out there for Bitcoin on the crypto scene, on the crypto sector, and what are some of their characteristics that makes them different than Bitcoin? I mean, people hear about Bitcoin. It's become like a brand name for the entire industry, but there are other types of, it's like the Coca-Cola of the cryptocurrency industry. So I know that there are others, and if they're competing, they are looking to create an advantage for them, a competitive advantage. What is the difference between them for people who are just tuning in for the first time and they want to understand if Bitcoin is what they need, or maybe they need to own other types of cryptocurrencies?
Okay, yeah, I know of. I think I know Litecoin the best because it's really simple. Litecoin is the same as Bitcoin, but it's a different blockchain, and it gets mined 4 times as fast. So there's going to be 82 million Litecoin at the end instead of 21 million. And it only takes 2.5 minutes to get a new block instead of 10 minutes. Other than that, it's exactly the same. And its price is like $5 instead of 1,200 because Bitcoin was first. I think it's just, that's pretty much how I analyze it. Yeah. There's also the idea that if Litecoin has value, then anybody could make one. I mean, Litecoin's a factor of 1/4, or 4 times as fast as Bitcoin. So you make another one that's 10 times as fast as Bitcoin. Well, is that one going to be valuable too? People look at that question and say, well, not really, because you could just keep doing that. But what are we just going to buy 1,000 different cryptocurrencies because they all have different factors of speed? No. Okay, well, collapse that answer all the way back to Litecoin, and the answer is no. So, but there is one thing that drives people away from Bitcoin, and that is the fact that transaction fees are going up. Because right now we can only have 1 megabyte worth of transactions in 10 minutes. And it's proven to not be enough. Last time I looked, there were 15,000 transactions waiting to be confirmed in Bitcoin. So there's, so some other cryptos are like Dash. Dash is a little bit faster, I think. And also Dash has been working on making it more anonymous. Because right now, if somebody knows that you own a Bitcoin address, they can go back on the blockchain and look at everything that you've done with that address. So they know when and how much Bitcoin you got for all of the times you got it to that address, and when and how much you spent every time you spent it from that address. And that's and so I think Monero is also trying to fix that somewhat. So that's Dash and Monero. And then Dash has some other kind of cool features like masternodes, I think, which is a way for people to get paid in Dash by providing the network services that the cryptocurrency needs. So for example, Bitcoin needs Bitcoin nodes. When you make a Bitcoin transaction, sure, you can broadcast it to the internet, but who's going to listen? The people who listen are also running Bitcoin nodes. So they get that transaction, they pass it on to the ones they're connected to. It's a big mesh network. Every cryptocurrency is a big mesh network. Or think of just a fish net where every knot is a node. So when you send a message, it goes from knot to knot to knot till it gets to somebody who's mining. Then they put it in a block, and the block goes out to all the knots, and that's kind of how that works. Okay, so that's Monero and Dash and Litecoin. Then there's the scam coins, which, well, I'm sorry for all the people that hold one coin. Maybe by now everybody knows. That to me, sorry, go ahead. Oh, Ethereum. Yeah, that's a good one too. I believe Ethereum has a more powerful scripting language than Bitcoin. So the scripting language exists because, remember I said you make a transaction and you sign it? That transaction is actually a piece of code, and the Bitcoin software runs the code and it wants to come up with the answer yes. And the only way to do that is if you use the secret to sign the thing. So Ethereum's script is a little more sophisticated, so it can do more things. For example, well, the cheap example, Bitcoin can also do this, is a multi-signature. So like you and I could put some Bitcoin somewhere, and the only way they could be spent is if both of us used our secrets to sign the transaction. Bitcoin can do that. Sure, yeah, exactly. But then there's more complicated things that it can do with Ethereum. And actually, when Ethereum had a problem, I don't know, maybe a year ago, where it split into two because there was a thing called the DAO, and somebody had studied the code enough to see a flaw in the DAO. Well, everybody else thinks it's a flaw. If you talk to the people who designed the thing, they would say, yes, it's a flaw. But this guy saw it as an opportunity because he could write some code that would cause the system to funnel Ethereum into his address. So he did, and he let it loose, and he ran it for a while, and he got a bunch of Ethereum out of it. And then they forked the Ethereum blockchain to basically cut him out of the proceeds of his little piece of code. But he didn't, some people say, well, he did something wrong. He violated the spirit of the creation of the DAO. I agree with that. But did he violate any laws? No, he just used the code that was written. And so that's an interesting thing for people to think about regarding Bitcoin and Bitcoin Unlimited and anybody that writes software where we start thinking the code is the law. If you want to say the code is the law, and it's computer code, it has hidden bugs. All computer code has hidden bugs. We don't know what they are, and someday we're going to find that. But if you want the law to look that way, well, that's kind of a problem until you can really be on top of it and say, yeah, you know, part of my wealth, 10% of my wealth is dependent on that code. And I think that I understand it well enough to take that risk. So there I am. And I'm actually in that position with Bitcoin. I'm not in that position with any other cryptocurrencies.
Interesting. That is very interesting. Dave, please plug your website and tell people a little bit of what you do, where they can find you, and yeah, give all the good stuff.
Okay, yeah. The best website to understand me is voluntarist.com, and it's not even my website. It's run by Carl Watner, who's a historian, and he's been publishing the Voluntarist newsletter since 1982. So I'm a voluntarist, and I advocate. Everyone else is too, they just haven't realized it yet. A lot of people have, and I would welcome you to the club as soon as you do. I also have a blog on Blogspot. It's Litmocracy, which is L-I-T, which is the beginning of literature, L-I-T Mocracy, which is the end of democracy. So litmocracy.blogspot.com. And on my blog, I've been publishing some articles on an idea I had about replacing government. So we're all relying on, well, I'm not, but most people are relying on the government to maintain social cohesion. And on my blog post, I call it social order, and I had some discussions with people who said, really, it's you need a better term, because if you Google social order, you get pictures of police and tyranny. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about actual social order, people working together and cooperating. So social cohesion is better. I have not updated the blog posts, but the ideas that I'm trying to present are there. If you care to read them, that would be awesome.
Dave, great interview. Thanks for coming on the show. We'll have you back again. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Another important cryptocurrencies show, and we covered more advanced subjects such as the how Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies work, what is Bitcoin mining, what are the effects of the of the Bitcoin on the banking industry, and why the bankers are now watching what's going on closely. The future of financial technology has a lot to do with these currencies, and since relatively few people own them, currently less than 1 in 5,000, you're taking a wise step by listening to this show and getting the updates. Wealth Research Group is currently assessing investment opportunity in the cryptocurrency sector, and we will publish a special report for free to free members of our 365 Wealth newsletter. So make sure you're subscribed, where we will cover the top stocks to watch and the trends to conduct due diligence on. Make sure you watch our time-sensitive microdoc on the debt ceiling on YouTube called June 1st, Deep State to Overthrow Trump, as well as download our exclusive report on offshore gold storage, getting a second passport, and even owning offshore real estate at wealthresearchgroup.com/safe havens. We'll be hosting Mr. Gerald Salente, Jim Rickards, and many experts in the coming weeks. Stay tuned.